This is the Audio Psychic Theater. My name is Brian Jones. I am your host and your chief experimental instigator. We're going to get started here in just a moment. Welcome aboard. Hi, this is Brian. This is the very first episode of what I'm calling Audio Psychic Theater. So I'm going to lay down a whole lot of things that I've learned that I know are possible, and I'm doing. What I've witnessed shows that there is a lot of expansion of human and animal potential, at least. So what is possible? I get informational signals, which the reason I call them audio psychic is because the thing that started me out on this was hearing about David John Oates and his work in which he called reverse speech. And I had a really strong synchronicity that very day before I heard about David. It was my mother that told me. I'll spare that story for right now because I want to cover a bunch of informational points here. So anyway, the reverse speech thing led me into putting on headphones and analyzing things in dual direction. When I started audio cassette, I moved to digital, of course, and with a computer you can do a lot more. When I first started, I literally was doing things on a mechanical basis. What I've come to realize is I can get information, and back to the audio psychic thing, one of the things I'd say is that even with analyzing so-called speech reversals of incarnate people and EVPs and all this sort of anomalous audio, is that people hear things differently. And I'm telling you, that is the basic step. But there is a collective observation that I've been aware of and constantly reminded of, is that even though different people may hear different things of a certain anomalous audio psychic signal, the different interpretations a lot of times enhance each other. In other words, it's another way of describing something with more nuances. I know when I was younger, I don't know that I would have thought about it, except there were a couple TV shows got me thinking about psychic abilities. But I've always been really sensitive, and I found out that I probably have a bit of a extra sensitivity or sensory attribute that way. I'm not disciplined. I can't slow my mind down. I've tried doing that meditation where you focus on your breathing. Maybe someday, not yet. But the thing is, with my manic energies, which, it's hard to manage. It's really made my life difficult, but it's a benefit. I mean, I've had a couple bouts of total lack of energy, and I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't, because as much of a torment as I've had to deal with the way things are for me, or have been, I wouldn't trade, because at least I can get things done. Times when I felt that other side of the equation was very bleak. No energy, ouch. Okay, so anyway, when I first started doing the reverse speech, I had time on my hands. I managed my life to where I could literally spend a lot of time doing this. And my attitude was, give me a 15-minute recording of something that's loaded with additional information, and I'm going to listen to that thing for 30 hours if I have to. I am going to crack the code, and I would do that. I'd listen to the thing a bunch of times, and I wouldn't hear anything. It just sounded like nothing, and so I would listen over and over again, and then I would start hearing things that would emerge that sounded like, hey, English phrases embedded backwards. And then I'd start hearing more and more. That was the pattern. For the first number of years, I had to realize that it took time to crack the code. But here's what's so mind-blowing about it, is that it took me a long time to tune in, and then I'd start hearing things. But then once I isolated the burst that I call these deliveries of audio psychic information, it's an expression that you can tap into with your conscious mind just through audio recording media, and knowing how to slow it down and, of course, listen to it backwards and forwards. Okay, well, I'd like to expand on that. And what I was saying is that when early on about the reverse speech thing, which is what really got me going on all this, is that after a certain amount of time, I would start hearing phrases, yet I couldn't. Even with, at the time, admittedly, a year into it, I had quite a few hours of training my ears to listen for this stuff. But that was, what I was up against is that I would have to listen over and over again. And then all of a sudden, as I put it, I would crack the code. I would start hearing coherent messages, and then more and more would emerge. It was like I reached a zone where all of a sudden I tuned into it and things were just blossoming, I guess you could say. So, but here is the mind blower about that. One guy that I know that was open-minded to this and actually a bit enthusiastically interested, he would listen. I would clip out these bursts of what I think are informational bits of audio. Anyway, so I would play them for him. And the first time immediately that he listened to this concentrated area that I picked out, my friend Roger would say, well, I hear this, and he would get like half of what I was perceiving. And then I'd say, listen a few more times, and he'd say, hey, well, that's about as good as I can do. And then I'd say, well, listen for this, and I'd tell him what I heard, and I would watch his body language and his eyes especially. It was like, pow. He's like, bam. He'd say, how do you do that? And he would hear it right away. And what I'm saying is that it took me a long time to get those nuggets out, but once I did, it seemed like they were more to the forefront as what I just described. So anyway, listen, I have a checklist here, and normally I try to explain things, and what I want to do is I just kind of want to go through this checklist, and here's what I'm saying is that these are based on a lot of experience, my perceptions and observations. So, just because I'm going to blast through it, don't think that I'm expecting you to believe any of this. Ask me about it later. Remind me. I want to be proactive, interactive with other people now. That's my whole goal of reaching out through YouTube. So here, let's go. So, yeah, like I said, I'm looking at my little cue cards. Early on, no limits, crack the code. I just talked about that. And by the way, just recently I talked to a young lady, 19-year-old woman, that I was pretty impressed with. And she said that she's thinking, and I agree, this is how I feel, is that as we're moving forward collectively, a lot of human beings that are self-aware and want to take responsibility for things, they don't want to go to people to tell them how to think. They want to take charge of these personal matters themselves. So I just want to get that clear, is that I certainly don't want to try to tell anybody how to think. Anyway, so next thing is what I'm aiming for with my abilities here. I want to aim for positive things, and I'm going to describe what I mean by that in a minute here. So I don't know if I covered this, but as I was getting into the reverse speech, I would start hearing extra, I guess you'd call them voices, in the background. I mean, coming from sources unknown. And so I moved into what is termed, I don't know if it still is, but it was, instrumental transcommunication, ITC. Look it up on the internet. I'll leave that alone too for right now. But also when I was doing that, in other words, wanting to communicate with unseen personalities, I would a lot of times hear messages through the headphones as I was recording in so-called real time, which I have a problem with those two words going together. But anyway, I would call it out, what I just heard, and then on playback many times. It was there phonetically. It was physically present. So I want to say that. And then, I mean, I've witnessed things that completely defy linear time and physics. And I guess I'll save that for later also. And about my questioning of linear time is that there's a thing that David Oates calls a blend reversal, where a backwards phrase captured on audio recording will make sense grammatically, but if you think about it, okay, it's between two people. One person starts it, the other person finishes it, but if you think about it on a conscious level, whoever finished that backwards phrase to kind of blend with the other person to make a combined statement that made sense, they made the sounds first. It just defies linear time. And I want to say that those blend reversals are pretty intriguing. And I have one of myself between myself and another man, and myself and a golden retriever, and I will show you that down the road a ways. I also have, I was analyzing audio from many years before, 30 years old, give or take, the actual recording. The person that I was listening to had been deceased for about 20 years, yet I hear right in the middle of it, my first name blast out. Now, is there a bigger picture that we don't understand about the fact that maybe this man that had died by the name of Bill O'Neill, the operator of the Spiricom, somehow knew that I was going to be listening to his voice 20 years after he was dead, 30 years after it was recorded, for him to blast out and say, Brian, I'll back that up later. If anybody wants to hear an elaboration on that, I'll certainly do it. Okay, here's another thing, is that because I've been able to get phrases when there's nobody around and cross into the non-physical realm, I would say, I wonder if, like the stories we've heard about NDEs, near-death experience, including my people I know personally, where they had a medical trauma, and my cousin, she told me that during an episode in the hospital where the nurses goofed up and she was overdosed with her medication, I guess it was traumatizing her body, and she literally said she was outside of her physical body looking at the body that was being overdrugged. But she said when her spirit, I guess, I'm filling in the blanks here because she does not like to talk like that, was outside of that physical body, she had crystal clear, expanded consciousness, awareness. And she didn't go into detail, but she told me that it was an experience she'll never forget. So I'm just wondering about like a coma patient. We could facilitate in that proximity of that body, that unconscious body, spirit, consciousness, essence of that body in this incarnation. I do believe these things are possible. Okay, I've said a lot of things here, and like I said, I can back them all up. I didn't just come up with this week. I've witnessed this stuff over and over again, so please question me on it. And by the way, the thing is, what I'm reaching out to do is, I want some of you out there that have personal situations like this to get a hold of me. Get a hold of me through my website or my email, which is inventor, INVENTOR 2012 @yahoo.com. Let's have a personal conversation. And so now to move right into practicality of illustrating accessing the backward speech, I want to show you my custom reverse deck that I modified, to play dual direction on one side of the tape. I have a demo of this very thing, and it has a toggle switch where I can flick it backwards, forwards, in a fraction of a second, literally, in a fraction of a syllable. And that's what I want to show you. I'm very proud of that. Like I said, I won't say it's a dying art, but it's pretty esoteric, that's for sure. So anyway, listen to this demo right now. And what it is actually is me counting from 1 to 7, and then you hear, when I play it back, it's the absolute opposite of that. And then I go from there forward to show you at the flick of a toggle switch finger without even having to look at it. Like I said, I'm kind of an old school guy that likes mechanics. I don't have to look at it. This is my favorite way of analyzing audio in dual direction. It takes a full-size cassette, but I can walk down the street and go flick, flick, And I mean, it's back and forward, split second, really getting in deep, with the magnification. So anyway, sorry, I got a little romanticized about that, but listen to the demo of my custom creation on a vintage piece of audio equipment. Here goes. For the test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Das ist ja für 4, 3, no, 1, no, 1, no, 1, no, 1. Okay, as I'm going to start playing you some standard so-called speech reversals, I want to make this point also. The I statement is extremely prevalent. In incarnate people's backward speech naturally occurring. It's an expression of the self. So the word I am, I'm doing this, I'm thinking this, I'm feeling this. It's everywhere. And I've documented it quite a bit in the same thing with animals' vocal energies and also with so-called ITC, these spirit voices. So the very first sample is such an example of what I believe is an I statement. This is a very short, action-packed, live police car radio call, and it's a multi-police cruiser high-speed chase on the freeway. There's a man and a woman in a car being pursued, and they just killed somebody with a gun at a shopping mall. So they're known to be deadly, armed and deadly. And this officer right here that you're going to hear in a second, this high energy, sees them coming up in his rear view mirror. Not a good place to be. Here's what he said about that. Units, I'm out in front of them now. What I hear of a burst of his expression backwards under this pressure is, I'm moving off, they armor deadly. Think about that grammar, and that's another thing. It's very individualized. I'm moving off, an I statement. I'm getting the hell out of their way because they're armed and they are deadly. And now on this next example, actually two of them, this is from early on, probably right around 1998. I was approached by some people that knew that I was involved in this. I'd been posting on forum boards. They asked me to go and record a sales pitch on a phone line where you could call up a number, and these people were asking for investment, and I didn't know anything about it. I think it was about a 10-minute recorded message to get people hyped up into wanting to invest money into this product that they had. Here is part of the forward sales pitch.
The chairman of our board is Larry Brady, who for 8 years served as the Undersecretary of Commerce for Ronald Reagan. He served in 3 presidential administrations. He was the chief trade negotiator for the United States between both Europe and the United States and Asia.
And out of this one, I do believe I am getting another I statement. And in this case, what I hear is I share sand bullshit. And think about the imagery that comes with that. Sand, castles made of sand, slips through your fingers. No solid foundation there. And the BS reference, that kind of fits too, and I'll fill you in on that. But anyway, what I'm hearing of this one is I share sand bullshit. And let me elaborate again. He's sharing this information. I mean, he is presenting this, so it completely fits. Once again, I share sand bullshit.
I share sand bullshit.
Okay, and then here is another forward bit of this presentation where he's looking to get investors to step up and spend some money. And here's what he said.
You're going to join a joint venture of 3 entities. One is our consulting company, 21st Century Global Trust, and We Know Multi-Level. Second is American Technologies Group, and that's a group of scientists and government officials who are a research firm who discovered IE Bristol. And third is Integral Health, which is a group of 78 MDs who are out to change the healthcare delivery system.
You may notice that he was jumping around from topic to topic, boasting about the credentials of people involved in this organization. This is a unique way of expressing that in words. What I hear of this one is hop, strut, the road, bullshit.
Strut, the road, bullshit.
Well, think about hop, strut. He's jumping around on subjects, strutting his stuff, boasting about the credentials here. The road, it's a documented metaphor in David Oates' work as the reverse speech metaphor dictionary that he'd put together. And the road is the path you're on, the direction towards the goal, your agenda, what you're aiming for. Maybe in this case it's about money, but the road in a bigger sense can be the path you're on in your life. I was into this a number of hours, this particular project, and after getting a whole theme of things, I emailed the people that had enlisted me to take a look at this, and I said, do not go in there. And then they wrote me back and admitted to me that they were a watchdog organization and that the deal was already done, that a lot of people got screwed over hard. So think about the benefit of knowing this stuff up front. We are rapidly running out of time here for this 30-minute presentation. I want to jump on this because here are a couple very astounding samples of things along these lines. This is O.J. Simpson being so-called interrogated by the police detective just after the infamous Bronco ride. In this particular part of the interrogation, and which seemed to be the very strongest concern of the detectives, O.J. had given Nicole some jewelry, and so he's asking about that here, and I think O.J. got the jewelry back. From what I'd gathered vaguely, is that it was valuable jewelry, and I think he's saying here that he got it back from Nicole, and he had given it to his current girlfriend, and he's talking about either a period of either 2 or 3 weeks. And here's what he said about that forward right here.
And did she return it the same day?
Oh, no, this is, I get into a funny place here on this, all right? Yeah. She returned it, both of them. I mean, 3 weeks ago or so, because when I said I'm in a funny place on this, it's because I gave it to my girlfriend and told her it was for her. And that was 3 weeks ago. So I bought it for her.
Well, I do believe that there may have been something very intriguing and telling about this happening in a lot different time frame. And what I hear of this one is 12 hours. I guess you missed, son.
12 hours. I guess you missed, son. 12 hours. I guess you missed, son. 12 hours. I guess you missed, son.
Now think about that. He's talking about 2 or 3 weeks being the time frame, but yet maybe this happened a lot closer to the time of the murders, and it might be very significant. And think about that. I guess you missed that. Like they were not able to pin it down, possibly the police. And I guess you missed son. Pretty condescending, if you ask me. I'll play it one more time. 12 hours. I guess you missed son.
12 hours. I guess you missed, son. 12 hours. I guess you missed, son. 12 hours. I guess you missed, son.
Okay, now here is another sample of O.J. during this so-called interrogation that in all my years, this one's very compelling and stands out, and I think it implies a lot more along the lines of non-locality, spirit, essence, consciousness, whatever you want to say. But it's back to the thing, this whole line of questioning. What did O.J. give Nicole? The detective here says the word give twice. O.J. says the word gave twice. Here it is.
Did you get together with her on her birthday?
Yeah, her 96, I believe.
Did you give her a gift?
I gave her a gift.
What did you give her?
I gave her either the bracelet or the earrings.
Now, if you listen to this, the instant O.J. talks with his deep, muffled voice, with this recording, which it has a lot of bass, which makes the muffling even tougher to listen through, the very first words that come out of his mouth come from a different level of consciousness. And in my guess, it's his soul basically admitting something here. So the question was, what did O.J. give Nicole? What I hear in the forward direction in this anomalous burst is giving her maggots.
Giving her maggots. Giving her maggots. Giving her maggots.
Think about that. Hey, listen, I know that that's fairly heavy energy for a lot of reasons. I want to get past that, and I want to also emphasize the fact of what I said earlier. I'm not looking to get a bunch of dirt on people anymore. That's not my aim. Just like James Van Praagh, I heard him say once, he used to do cases of like missing children and crimes and things like that. He said he didn't want to bring himself down to that vibration. And I think, no, I know what my aim is to aim higher, in other words, to bring things through that liberate and expand the possibilities by gaining understanding in a unique way. Maybe even just speeding it up of something that would come to you down the road in a couple of years. Anyway, I am open to suggestions on this sort of thing. And now I'd like to also show that the inner mind or the soul or the spirit or whatever you want to call it is very busy and operates outside of linear time, I would imagine. And let me just show you something in music. Many of you, if not all of you, probably are familiar with the song by Queen called We Are the Champions. I almost called it the altar name, which I'm going to present to you in a second. I've already made this presentation of it, and this one was for effects. What I want you to listen for, okay, this is the tail end of the song, so it's going to be forward, and then you'll hear a little squeak, and then it's going back in the other direction. I want you to listen for the phrase, nightmares that I heal. Well, if you're able to hear that, or even if you aren't, like I said, I hear it plainly. I think many people have told me they can. That is the actual mirror, phonetic mirror of the title and the chorus of the song, which is We Are the Champions. And if you think about the spirit of the song, I've had my share of sand kicked in my face, but I come through. It's been no bed of roses, on and on, where Freddie Mercury's singing about these things that happen in life that aren't real pleasurable, but you muscle through it, because we are the champions. Anyway, that one again, nightmares that I heal. We are out of time. If you're interested in the potential I'm talking about, or you would like to give me your feedback or your suggestions, please do get a hold of me. Please spread the word about this. If you know how to use social media and you feel compelled, please do spread the word. Give it a thumbs up and a like or whatever the heck it is. I don't know anything about all that stuff, but I really am wanting to knock on doors. So if you know anybody that does radio or internet shows along these lines, please consider suggesting me as a guest. I'd like to knock on as many doors as possible to bring through the psychic telepathic communication benefits. You can contact me through email, inventor2012@yahoo.com, or through my website, audiomedium.com. Once again, thank you very much for listening. Happy New Year.